My body's too tall. I'm not breeding material, the towering blacksmith declared as cruel laughter echoed from the saloon, while the weathered surveyor dismounted his horse and studied her with different eyes. The frontier town saw only a spectacle in the 7.5-foot woman, crossing streets to avoid her shadow, whispering she was cursed to die alone and childless. But when the government man arrived with his measuring tools and respectful manner, he saw strength where others saw shame. As their unlikely bond deepened against the town's mounting fury, neither realized their connection would expose a decades-old conspiracy involving stolen land and buried mineral wealth, secrets powerful men would kill to protect. Will their forbidden love destroy them both, or will it uncover the truth that could transform an entire community? The hammer struck hot iron with thunderous precision. Magnolia Thornfield stood at her forge, towering 7 feet and 6 inches above the dusty ground of Clearwater Springs. Sparks danced around her powerful frame as she shaped horseshoes with expert hands. Through the open doorway, whispers carried on the desert wind. Townspeople gathered across the street, their voices sharp with judgment. Mrs. Henderson clutched her shawl tighter. Old Pete spat into the dirt. Children pointed before their mothers pulled them away. Magnolia had grown accustomed to the stares. At 28, she lived alone at the edge of town where decent folk wouldn't venture unless necessity demanded it. Her customers paid quickly and left without conversation. They needed her metalwork but wanted no part of her company. The general store clerk crossed himself when she passed. The preacher avoided her gaze during Sunday services. Even the prostitutes at the saloon whispered that God had made a mistake with her unusual height. In a frontier town where survival meant fitting in, Magnolia stood out like a monument to everything people feared about the unknown. Thunder rolled across the plains as a lone rider approached. Dust clouds followed his horse's hooves. The man wore a weathered hat and carried surveying equipment strapped to his saddle. Government papers poked from his saddlebags. Ezekiel Cartwright pulled his mount to a stop near the town center. His horse favored its left front hoof. The animal needed immediate attention from a blacksmith. At the general store, Henderson pointed toward the forge with obvious reluctance. Other townspeople shook their heads and muttered warnings. The stranger tipped his hat politely and rode toward Magnolia's workshop. Most visitors approached her forge with hesitation. This man dismounted with calm confidence. He removed his hat and nodded respectfully. Magnolia set down her hammer. Years of cruel treatment had taught her to expect the worst from strangers. She waited for the familiar look of disgust or fear. Instead, Zeke examined her workspace with genuine interest. Quality tools hung in perfect order. Finished metalwork displayed remarkable craftsmanship. The forge operated with professional efficiency that impressed him. Magnolia lifted the horse's injured hoof with gentle expertise. The shoe had loosened and needed immediate replacement. She selected iron stock and began heating it in the forge fire. Zeke watched her work with fascination. Her movements showed years of training and natural talent. The mathematical precision required for proper metalwork became apparent as she measured and shaped the horseshoe. While she worked, Zeke studied the surveying calculations she'd written in the dirt. Complex equations filled the space near her anvil. The mathematics impressed him with their accuracy and advanced understanding. Magnolia noticed his interest in her numbers. Most people couldn't read, let alone understand mathematical principles. This stranger examined her work with the eye of someone who appreciated intellectual precision. The new horseshoe fit perfectly. Magnolia's charges remained fair despite her skill level exceeding most blacksmiths in the territory. Zeke paid without haggling and thanked her with sincere gratitude. As he prepared to leave, Cornelius Blackwood emerged from the saloon. The unofficial town leader commanded respect through wealth and political connections. His word carried weight in all local matters. Blackwood approached the forge with purposeful strides. His expression showed disapproval at finding the government surveyor conducting business with Magnolia. Town's social order demanded certain boundaries that shouldn't be crossed. The confrontation drew attention from nearby businesses. Shopkeepers emerged from doorways. Women gathered behind windows. Children peeked around corners. Everyone understood that important social dynamics were being tested. Blackwood spoke in low, urgent tones. His words carried warnings about associating with unsuitable people. Reputation mattered in frontier communities. Wise men avoided entanglements that could damage their standing. Zeke listened politely but showed no signs of intimidation. His government position provided certain protections from local political pressure. More importantly, his character didn't bend easily to social prejudices. After Blackwood departed, Zeke lingered at the forge. He asked thoughtful questions about Magnolia's metalworking techniques. Their conversation revealed her extensive knowledge of engineering principles and mathematical applications. For the first time in years, Magnolia found herself engaged in intellectual discussion. The stranger treated her opinions with respect. He didn't stare at her height or make cruel observations about her appearance. As evening approached, Dr. Iris Pemberton arrived on the westbound stage. The traveling physician carried medical supplies and progressive ideas about frontier health care. Her reputation for treating patients regardless of social status preceded her arrival. News of the female doctor spread quickly through town. Some welcomed professional medical care. Others viewed her presence with suspicion. Change came slowly to places like Clearwater Springs. That night, Magnolia worked by lamplight in her forge. The stranger's respectful treatment had awakened something long dormant inside her heart. For years, she'd accepted the town's judgment about her unsuitability for normal life. The cruel whispers echoed in her memory. Too tall for any decent man, built wrong for bearing children, destined to die alone and forgotten. She'd internalized their harsh assessments until they became her own beliefs about herself. But the surveyor had seen something different. Intelligence instead of abnormality, skill instead of shame, potential instead of predetermined failure. Across town, Zeke studied his maps by candlelight. The government survey work would keep him in Clearwater Springs for several weeks. His preliminary measurements suggested interesting geological formations in the area. Tomorrow would bring new encounters with the remarkable blacksmith. Something about her combination of physical presence and intellectual capacity intrigued him. The town's treatment of her seemed both cruel and wasteful of obvious talents. Neither realized that their growing connection would soon challenge everything Clearwater Springs believed about worth, belonging, and the true meaning of community. Dr. Pemberton examined Magnolia in the privacy of her small cabin behind the forge. The physician's trained eyes assessed bone structure, proportions, and overall health indicators. Her findings contradicted everything the town believed about Magnolia's condition. The medical examination revealed a rare but completely natural genetic variation. Dr. Pemberton had encountered similar cases during her medical training in Philadelphia. The condition affected perhaps one person in 50,000, causing exceptional height while maintaining perfect health. More importantly, the doctor's research indicated that women with this particular genetic pattern typically possessed enhanced fertility rather than the sterility townspeople assumed. Their bodies were naturally designed for successful pregnancies and healthy childbirth. Magnolia stared at the doctor in disbelief. 28 years of accepting cruel judgments about her unsuitability for motherhood crumbled in a single conversation. Everything she'd been told about her body was medically false. Dr. Pemberton explained the science behind Magnolia's condition with gentle authority. The same genetic factors that created her remarkable height also optimized her reproductive system. Nature had equipped her for exactly what society claimed she couldn't achieve. The revelation shattered Magnolia's internalized shame. Years of believing herself defective dissolved as medical truth replaced social prejudice. Her extraordinary stature wasn't a curse, but a rare gift that came with unexpected advantages. Meanwhile, Zeke continued his surveying work around town. His government equipment measured land elevations, soil composition, and geological formations with scientific precision. The mathematical calculations required for accurate mapping impressed local observers. Blackwood watched the surveyor's activities with growing concern. Government interest in the area suggested potential changes to land ownership and mineral rights. Such developments could disrupt carefully maintained power structures. When Zeke returned to the forge for additional metalwork, he found Magnolia transformed. Confidence replaced the defensive posture he'd noticed during their first meeting. She stood straighter, spoke more freely, and engaged him with newfound intellectual boldness. Their conversations revealed Magnolia's remarkable mathematical abilities. Her father had taught her advanced calculations before his death 10 years earlier. She'd continued studying on her own, solving complex engineering problems for the pure joy of mental challenge. Zeke presented her with surveying calculations that had puzzled him for days. Magnolia examined the figures and quickly identified errors in his measurements. Her corrections proved accurate when he rechecked the disputed areas. The collaboration impressed Zeke beyond mere professional admiration. Magnolia's mathematical intuition exceeded that of trained engineers he'd worked with in larger cities. Her intellectual gifts had been completely wasted in a community that saw only her physical differences. Their working relationship evolved into something deeper. Zeke found himself visiting the forge daily, ostensibly for equipment repairs, but actually for the pleasure of intelligent conversation. Magnolia looked forward to these encounters with anticipation she hadn't felt in years. Town gossip escalated accordingly. Mrs. Henderson organized prayer circles to discuss the inappropriate association. Old Pete declared it unnatural for any decent man to court such an unusual woman. The saloon buzzed with crude speculation about their relationship. Blackwood summoned several prominent citizens to address what he termed a growing problem. The surveyor's interest in Magnolia challenged accepted social boundaries. If such behavior continued unchecked, it might encourage other undesirable changes to established order. Dr. Pemberton faced similar resistance when she attempted to share her medical findings. Several townspeople accused her of spreading dangerous ideas that contradicted natural law. They preferred their prejudices to scientific evidence. The doctor persisted despite opposition. She spoke privately with widow McKinnon, whose late husband had been known for fairness and Christian charity. Perhaps some minds could still be open to truth and compassion. Economic pressure began targeting Magnolia's business. Customers found excuses to avoid her forge. Orders for metalwork decreased as Blackwood encouraged people to seek services elsewhere. The campaign aimed to isolate her financially and socially. But Zeke's continued support provided emotional strength against mounting hostility. His respect for her intelligence and character helped counteract years of internalized shame. For the first time since childhood, Magnolia believed she might deserve happiness. Their relationship deepened beyond intellectual partnership. Zeke's genuine appreciation for her mind and spirit awakened feelings Magnolia had long suppressed. She'd convinced herself that love wasn't possible for someone like her. The surveyor saw past physical differences to recognize exceptional character. Magnolia's resilience, intelligence, and gentle nature attracted him more than conventional beauty ever could. Her uniqueness became a source of admiration rather than concern. Dr. Pemberton documented her medical findings in detailed reports. The scientific evidence about Magnolia's condition could revolutionize understanding of genetic variation and human potential. Such knowledge challenged fundamental assumptions about normalcy and worth. Meanwhile, Zeke's survey work revealed intriguing geological patterns around Clearwater Springs. Mineral deposits appeared more extensive than initial estimates suggested. The discovery could transform the area's economic prospects significantly. Blackwood's anxiety increased as he observed these developments. The surveyor's presence threatened multiple aspects of his carefully constructed influence. Political, social, and economic changes loomed on the horizon. Magnolia began asserting herself in ways that shocked longtime residents. She spoke up during town meetings. She challenged unfair treatment of other outcasts. Her newfound confidence inspired both admiration and fear among observers. The transformation from meek acceptance to quiet dignity marked a turning point in community dynamics. Other marginalized residents took notice. Perhaps change was possible if someone had courage to demand it. As Zeke's survey work neared completion, his personal investment in Clearwater Springs grew stronger. What began as routine government mapping had evolved into something much more significant. Magnolia's presence anchored him to this dusty, frontier town in ways he hadn't expected. The stage was set for confrontations that would test everyone's commitment to truth, justice, and human dignity. 3 weeks after Dr. Pemberton's examination, Magnolia noticed familiar changes in her body. Morning sickness arrived with gentle persistence. Her monthly cycle had ceased. The signs pointed to pregnancy with unmistakable clarity. Dr. Pemberton confirmed what Magnolia already suspected. The examination revealed a perfectly healthy pregnancy, progressing exactly as medical science would predict. Her genetic condition made conception not only possible but remarkably favorable. The news filled Magnolia with overwhelming joy mixed with terror. Everything the doctor had explained about her fertility was proving true. Yet the town's reaction to an unmarried pregnancy would be swift and merciless. Zeke received the news with quiet elation. His feelings for Magnolia had deepened beyond mere admiration into genuine love. The prospect of raising a child together felt like destiny rather than accident. He proposed marriage immediately. Social conventions meant nothing compared to his commitment to Magnolia and their unborn child. The government position provided enough income to support a family comfortably. Magnolia accepted with tears of happiness she'd never expected to shed. For 28 years, she'd believed herself destined for solitude. Now love and motherhood beckoned with miraculous possibility. Their private celebration couldn't remain secret long in a small town. Mrs. Henderson noticed Magnolia's changing figure within days. The gossip network activated with vicious efficiency. Blackwood seized the opportunity to rally community outrage. An unwed pregnancy involving the town's most notorious outcast provided perfect ammunition for his campaign. Moral indignation could accomplish what economic pressure had failed to achieve. The unofficial town leader organized meetings to address what he termed a crisis of public decency. Respectable citizens couldn't tolerate such flagrant violations of Christian values. Action was required to preserve community standards. Several businesses posted signs refusing service to Magnolia. The general store banned her completely. Even basic supplies became difficult to obtain as merchants followed Blackwood's lead. Dr. Pemberton faced similar ostracism for supporting the pregnancy. Her medical practice suffered as patients chose traditional remedies over professional care from someone who defended immoral behavior. But Widow McKinnon began questioning her participation in the collective cruelty. Private conversations with Dr. Pemberton had planted seeds of doubt about the town's treatment of Magnolia. Perhaps Christian charity demanded different responses. Zeke's surveying work continued despite mounting social pressure. His measurements revealed extensive mineral deposits throughout the area. Iron ore, copper, and silver veins ran beneath much of the surrounding land. The geological survey required precise mathematical calculations to map underground formations. Zeke struggled with complex equations until Magnolia offered assistance. Her mathematical intuition proved invaluable for accurate measurements. Working together, they discovered that Magnolia's forge sat directly above the richest mineral deposits in the region. Her family's original homestead claim encompassed land worth potentially thousands of dollars. Zeke's military background had taught him to trust careful observation over popular opinion. During the war, His artillery unit had relied on his mathematical precision for accurate cannon placement. Miscalculations meant death for friendly forces. Those skills now revealed geological treasures hidden beneath Clearwater Springs. The survey data would transform the area's economic prospects once submitted to territorial authorities. Blackwood watched these developments with growing alarm. He'd spent years quietly purchasing land around town for prices far below actual value. Sellers believed they were unloading worthless property. If mineral wealth became public knowledge, land values would skyrocket overnight. Blackwood's carefully constructed monopoly depended on continued ignorance about underground riches. The surveyor's presence threatened to expose secrets worth fortunes. Worse, his relationship with Magnolia complicated efforts to acquire her valuable property through social pressure. Dr. Pemberton began researching historical land records stored in the territorial office. Her medical training had taught her to investigate thoroughly rather than accept surface explanations. Something about Blackwood's rapid land acquisition seemed suspicious. Meanwhile, Magnolia's pregnancy progressed beautifully. Her exceptional height provided ample room for healthy fetal development. Dr. Pemberton's predictions about enhanced fertility were proving completely accurate. The contrast between medical reality and social hysteria became increasingly obvious. Magnolia represented perfect maternal health, while the town treated her like a plague carrier. Zeke's government authority protected him from direct confrontation, but isolation tactics intensified. Restaurant owners refused him service. Hotel rooms became unavailable. The community weaponized social exclusion with calculated precision. Several younger townspeople privately questioned the collective punishment. Magnolia had never harmed anyone. Her only crimes were unusual height and pregnancy outside marriage. Such offenses hardly justified community-wide hatred. But speaking against popular opinion required courage few possessed. Blackwood's influence touched every aspect of local commerce. Cross him, and economic retaliation followed swiftly. Magnolia found unexpected strength in her pregnancy. Carrying new life filled her with purpose beyond personal happiness. She was creating the family she'd never dared imagine possible. Her confidence continued growing despite escalating hostility. Years of accepting cruel treatment were ending. Motherhood demanded courage to protect her child from inherited shame. Dr. Pemberton documented every aspect of the pregnancy for medical records. Magnolia's case could revolutionize understanding of genetic diversity and human potential. Science would triumph over superstition eventually. Zeke completed mineral mapping for most of the surveyed territory. His findings would reshape the region's future once submitted to territorial headquarters. Economic transformation was inevitable. The couple began planning their wedding despite community opposition. Legal marriage would legitimize their child and formalize their partnership. Social approval mattered less than family bonds. As Magnolia entered her second trimester, the pregnancy became visible to casual observers. Public reaction intensified accordingly. The town prepared for confrontations that would test everyone's fundamental values. Blackwood sensed time running short for his carefully laid plans. The surveyor's work was nearly complete. Once mineral wealth became public knowledge, opportunity for profit would vanish forever. Dr. Pemberton's research in the territorial archives revealed disturbing patterns in Clearwater Springs land transactions. Over the past decade, Blackwood had acquired dozens of properties at suspiciously low prices. Original landowners had sold under mysterious circumstances. The medical records she discovered painted an even darker picture. Several previous landowners had died unexpectedly after refusing Blackwood's purchase offers. Others had fled town following campaigns of harassment and intimidation. Most shocking was the discovery of Magnolia's family history. Her father had owned prime land near the current town center. After his death, The property had somehow transferred to Blackwood despite clear inheritance laws favoring his daughter. Zeke's mineral survey confirmed Dr. Pemberton's suspicions. The most valuable deposits lay directly beneath properties Blackwood had acquired through questionable means. The man possessed an uncanny ability to identify worthless land that later proved incredibly valuable. The pattern suggested inside knowledge of geological surveys conducted years before Zeke's arrival. Someone had provided Blackwood with mineral information that guided his systematic land grab. Further investigation revealed that Blackwood's father had worked for an earlier territorial surveying expedition. Access to confidential geological data would have revealed the area's hidden wealth decades ago. The conspiracy had operated for an entire generation. Blackwood's family had used government information to steal land from legitimate owners through fraud, intimidation, and manufactured legal complications. Magnolia's case represented the scheme's ultimate target. Her forge sat above the richest mineral deposits in the entire region. Acquiring her property would complete Blackwood's monopoly over the area's underground wealth. The campaign to drive her from town wasn't motivated by moral outrage, but by pure greed. Blackwood had weaponized community prejudice to achieve economic conquest. Zeke felt sick, realizing how social hatred had been manipulated for financial gain. The town's cruelty toward Magnolia served someone else's profit rather than any genuine moral principle. Dr. Pemberton shared her discoveries with widow McKinnon, whose late husband had been known for integrity and fairness. If anyone could be trusted with explosive information, it was the preacher's widow. McKinnon listened with growing horror as the evidence mounted. Her own property had been targeted by Blackwood years earlier. Only her husband's reputation and community connections had protected them from the systematic theft. The widow realized she'd participated in persecuting an innocent woman whose only crime was owning valuable land. Shame and guilt motivated her to seek redemption through action rather than continued silence. Meanwhile, Magnolia's pregnancy entered the 5th month with perfect health. Her exceptional height provided ideal conditions for fetal development. Dr. Pemberton marveled at how nature had optimized her patient's body for successful childbearing. The contrast between medical reality and social hysteria became increasingly obvious to observant townspeople. Magnolia glowed with maternal health, while her persecutors grew bitter and cruel. Several younger residents began questioning the community's treatment of the pregnant woman. Her dignity in the face of relentless harassment impressed those with functioning consciences, but open dissent remained dangerous. Blackwood's economic influence reached every business in town. Challenge his authority, and financial ruin followed swiftly. Zeke completed his official survey with mounting urgency. Once submitted to territorial authorities, the mineral wealth would become public knowledge. Blackwood's window for completing his land grab was closing rapidly. The surveyor's romance with Magnolia had complicated the theft significantly. Her growing confidence and community support threatened to expose the entire conspiracy. Blackwood decided drastic action was necessary. He organized a town meeting to address what he termed the moral crisis threatening Clearwater Springs. Public pressure might succeed where economic intimidation had failed. Posters appeared throughout town announcing the emergency gathering. Every respectable citizen was expected to attend and voice support for traditional values. The time had come to resolve the Magnolia situation permanently. Dr. Pemberton and her allies used the announcement to accelerate their investigation. They needed concrete proof of Blackwood's crimes before the town meeting could destroy their evidence. Hidden documents were located in Blackwood's office after hours. Original land deeds showed clear title transfers that contradicted official records. The evidence proved systematic fraud spanning decades. Magnolia's father's signature appeared on a deed supposedly selling his property to Blackwood, but the date preceded his death by only days. Witnesses to the transaction had also died under suspicious circumstances. The forged documents revealed the conspiracy's scope and methods. Legal fraud, document alteration, and witness elimination had transferred millions of dollars in mineral rights to a single criminal. Zeke photographed the evidence using his surveying equipment. The documentation would prove Blackwood's guilt beyond reasonable doubt in territorial court. But first, they needed to survive the town meeting. Blackwood commanded loyalty from dozens of people whose livelihoods depended on his continued prosperity. Truth alone might not overcome economic self-interest. Magnolia prepared for the confrontation with newfound courage. Pregnancy had awakened protective instincts that overcame years of learned helplessness. Her child deserved better than inherited shame. She practiced speaking publicly after decades of enforced silence. The mathematical precision that served her metalworking would help organize arguments clearly and logically. Dr. Pemberton coached her in presentation techniques that would maximize impact. Medical authority would support Magnolia's moral arguments with scientific credibility. Widow McKinnon recruited other conscience-stricken townspeople to support the truth. Several families privately admitted doubts about Blackwood's version of events. The battle lines were drawn for a confrontation that would determine Clearwater Springs' moral character. Justice faced corruption in a struggle that would reshape the community permanently. As the town meeting approached, both sides prepared their strongest arguments and most compelling evidence. The town hall filled beyond capacity as Clearwater Springs gathered for the most important meeting in its history. Blackwood positioned himself at the front, flanked by his most loyal supporters. Their faces showed grim determination to resolve the Magnolia situation permanently. Magnolia entered with quiet dignity, her pregnancy now obvious to everyone present. Zeke walked beside her, carrying a leather satchel containing their evidence. Dr. Pemberton and Widow McKinnon followed closely behind. Hostile stares tracked their movement through the crowded room. Some townspeople crossed themselves. Others whispered crude comments about unnatural unions and moral decay. The atmosphere crackled with tension and barely contained hatred. Blackwood called the meeting to order with theatrical authority. He spoke passionately about community values and the need to protect decent families from corrupting influences. His words painted Magnolia as a threat to everything respectable citizens held sacred. Several supporters stood to voice agreement. Mrs. Henderson declared that tolerating such behavior would invite divine punishment upon the entire town. Old Pete insisted that decent women were already being corrupted by Magnolia's shameless example. The crowd murmured approval as speaker after speaker condemned the pregnant woman's presence in their community. Years of carefully cultivated prejudice erupted in a torrent of moral outrage and social disgust. But when Blackwood called for a vote to banish Magnolia permanently, Zeke rose to address the assembly. His government credentials commanded reluctant attention, even from hostile audience members. The surveyor presented his mineral findings with scientific precision. Maps and geological data proved that Clearwater Springs sat above extraordinary mineral wealth. The discovery would transform the region's economic prospects within months. Gasps rippled through the crowd as the implications became clear. Worthless frontier property would soon become incredibly valuable. Fortunes could be made by those who controlled the right land parcels. Zeke then revealed Blackwood's systematic acquisition of mineral-rich properties at fraudulent prices. The evidence showed decades of criminal conspiracy involving forged documents, intimidation, and theft of legitimate land claims. Dr. Pemberton took the floor to present historical records proving Magnolia's rightful ownership of the most valuable deposits. Her father's original homestead claim had been stolen through document forgery and legal manipulation. The medical evidence followed next. Dr. Pemberton's examination proved that Magnolia possessed exceptional fertility rather than the sterility townspeople assumed. Her pregnancy represented perfect maternal health, not moral corruption. Widow McKinnon stood with trembling courage to confess her participation in persecuting an innocent woman. Her husband would have been ashamed of the community's treatment of someone who deserved protection and support. Other voices joined the widow's confession. Families admitted doubts about Blackwood's version of events. Young people questioned why physical differences justified such cruel treatment. Blackwood fought desperately to regain control of the narrative. He accused the government surveyor of fabricating evidence to protect his immoral relationship. The documents could easily be forgeries designed to steal honest citizens' property. But the evidence overwhelmed his protests. Too many witnesses had seen the original documents. Too many people recognized the pattern of suspicious land transactions spanning decades. The crowd's mood shifted dramatically as truth replaced manufactured outrage. Blackwood's manipulation became obvious once exposed to honest examination. Moral indignation transformed into shame and guilt. Magnolia rose slowly to address the assembly that had tormented her for years. Her voice carried across the silent room with mathematical precision and quiet authority. She spoke about dignity, forgiveness, and the possibility of building a better community. Her words cut through years of accumulated prejudice and hatred. The woman they dismissed as unsuitable possessed remarkable intelligence and moral clarity. Their treatment of her reflected poorly on their own character rather than hers. She forgave their cruelty while challenging them to choose justice over comfort. The mineral wealth could benefit everyone if managed fairly. Continued corruption would destroy the community's soul even as it filled their pockets. The speech silenced even Blackwood's most ardent supporters. Magnolia's grace under pressure exposed their behavior as petty and shameful. Intelligence and character mattered more than physical conformity. A vote was called on Blackwood's leadership and land claims. The evidence of fraud was overwhelming. Only his closest associates supported him as the community chose integrity over continued complicity. Blackwood's political authority crumbled within minutes. Years of careful manipulation collapsed as truth overcame organized deception. His criminal conspiracy faced territorial prosecution and certain imprisonment. The forged land deeds were declared invalid by community consensus. Magnolia's rightful ownership was restored along with properties belonging to other victims of the systematic theft. Dr. Pemberton was formally welcomed as the town's official physician. Her medical expertise and moral courage earned respect that had been withheld due to prejudice and fear. Plans began immediately for fair distribution of mineral wealth among legitimate landowners. Clearwater Springs would prosper through honest cooperation rather than criminal exploitation. Magnolia found herself surrounded by apologetic neighbors seeking forgiveness for years of cruel treatment. The transformation from outcast to respected community leader happened with stunning swiftness. But the greatest victory was personal rather than political. Her pregnancy continued perfectly, proving that love and family were possible despite social prejudice. The child growing within her would inherit dignity instead of shame. Zeke completed his survey with community support instead of resistance. His relationship with Magnolia was celebrated rather than condemned. Their wedding would unite the town in celebration rather than division. Justice had prevailed through courage, truth, and moral clarity. Clearwater Springs prepared to rebuild itself on foundations of inclusion rather than hatred.